Thank you, Caleb. That song always sends chills up and down my spine, across my shoulders. Just appreciate, Caleb, all the songs that you led us in our song worship today. I was thinking, looks like he's beginning to feel a little more comfortable here. He and I had lunch together this week, and we were just talking, and he goes, "Oh yeah, feeling good, feeling welcomed, and feeling like this is becoming home and stuff like that." So, love this guy, love his heart. And good morning to those on Zoom, and also those will be watching later on YouTube. Never want to forget you. You're an important part of us and what we do. You can go ahead and open up to 1 Peter chapter 4. 1 Peter chapter 4. We're going to be talking about today one of the core teachings of Jesus. It's the fact that he's going to come home, that he's going to come again. He's coming again. One of the core elements of our lives as Jesus followers is that we are looking and living every day for the day that Jesus is going to come again. And when you look at 1 Peter chapter 4, verse 7, Peter says, and this is the New Living Translation, the one I like using. He says, the end of the world is coming soon. The end of the world is coming soon. Some translations may word it a little bit different. We're living in the last days, and we hear a lot about that. We hear a lot of talk about we're living in the last days, and I know amongst Jesus followers and others that call themselves Christians that we go, you know what, we're looking at the world, we're looking at the way the world is going right now today, the way that the world is going, and people are searching and they're trying to go, you know what, I'm looking at the signs. And we're in the last days. Well, let me tell you something. Peter wrote these words 2,000 years ago. And what did he say? He said, we're in the last days. Very point blank. The end of the world, it's near. We have been living in the last days for 2,000 years. We have been living in the last days ever since Jesus was resurrected. Because even his own disciples, and you can keep your finger there because we're going to be in 1 Peter chapter 4, but if you want to just flip back to Matthew 24. Not going to read a lot out of Matthew 24, just going to make a couple of references here to chapter 24 of Matthew and 25, because Jesus' own disciples, when he was alive on the earth and talking to them, they were always wondering, you know, what's next? What's next? And in chapter 24, as Jesus and his disciples were leaving the temple grounds, the disciples were looking at the temple. And they were looking at all the buildings that were around the temple. And they were in awe of all of those buildings there. And Jesus, he just told them, point blank, he said, you know, there's going to come a time that all of these buildings are going to be destroyed. All of these buildings, the temple, and all of these buildings around the temple, they're going to be demolished. And so in verse 3 of chapter 24 of Matthew, his disciples came to him privately and they said, just like us, well, when is this going to happen? When is it going to happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world? And actually, when you look at chapter 24 and even into chapter 25, Jesus is actually talking to his disciples about an event that takes place in AD 70. It was going to be about 40 years from this time that Jesus is talking to them, and he's telling them that this temple is literally going to be destroyed. There's not going to be one stone sitting on top of another stone, because we know from history in AD 70 that the Roman Empire invaded Jerusalem for the last time and destroyed the temple completely, demolished it, destroyed the whole city of Jerusalem. Tens of thousands of Jews lost their lives. And so Jesus is telling them, because can you imagine how they were feeling? Here they are, they never understood about Jesus anyway, a lot of things. As we talked about in class a little bit this morning, they were still looking at the kingdom that, Jesus is going to have this earthly kingdom. And he's going to have these positions of power, these positions of honor on his right hand and his left hand when he sits on this throne, ruling the world from a literal building with a literal army. And that's where a couple of his disciples and the mother actually came and said, hey, can my two sons have those positions of honor beside you in your kingdom cabinet? They missed it. They missed who Jesus was and what he is all about and what his kingdom is all about. Even you can read in Acts chapter 1, and I think it's around verse 8, when he's getting ready to ascend back into heaven. They asked Jesus point blank, is this the time that you're going to restore the power back to Israel and set up your kingdom? They missed it. And so Jesus is telling them that there's going to come a time that all of this, the temple and everything that you all put so much stock into, all of that's going to be destroyed. And as he's talking to them about that, he's also talking to them about when he's going to return one day. And their question is, when? And there are a lot of us that are sitting and wondering and worried. When are you going to return? When is Jesus coming back? And a lot of us, we're sitting on the pews, fretting, twiddling our thumbs, wondering, Jesus, I just wish you would come back and just destroy all of this. But Jesus tells a couple of parables in chapter 25. I'm not going to read them, but one of them is about the 10 bridesmaids. Jesus tells a story like what we've been talking about in class, and he tells a story about there were 10 bridesmaids that were supposed to be getting the groom's house ready after his wedding. And their weddings would go sometimes a week. Sometimes they could go 2 or 3 weeks. Didn't know when the groom was going to come back with his bride. But he had 10 bridesmaids that were there that were supposed to have everything ready for the bride whenever she came back to her new house with her husband. And so when Jesus tells this story, he said, well, you know what? The groom and the bride, they were taking their time. They should have already come back. And so 5 of them kept on burning their lamps. And they ran out of oil, while the other 5, they kept preparing for his coming back to make sure that they would be ready when he comes back. And then all of a sudden, he's coming back, and they're going, hey, they're coming, they're coming, they're coming. And 5 of them go, uh-oh, we're not ready. Hey, we need to go and see if we can buy some oil for our lamps. And so they left to buy oil for the lamps. And in the meantime, the groom and his bride came and went in the house, and the doors were locked. Anybody outside couldn't get inside. And so the 5 returned with oil that they had bought from a store somewhere. And when they came back, they were banging on the door. Hey, we're back, we're back. But it was too late. Well, what's the point of that story? The point is clear. Don't worry about when he's going to come back. Be ready for when he comes back. And that's the same thing he told down below that in verses 14 and following of chapter 25 about the parable and the 3 servants that he gave to one servant, 5 talents of money. One he gave 2 talents of money, and to one he gave 1 talent of money. And he told him, all right, I've given you money, bags of money, based on your ability. So now I want you to go out with my money, and I want you to make it multiply. I want you to invest it in something. Do something with it. And so the one that had the 5 bags of silver, he goes out and he invested, and when the owner came back, he had 10 bags. He doubled it. The one with 2 bags of silver, he did the same thing. He had 4 bags of silver whenever the owner came back. But the one that had the 1 bag of silver, he was afraid. Jesus says he was afraid. He was afraid of his master. Oh, master, I know that you are a hard man to please. I know that, man, you get very angry, and stuff. And I didn't want to lose this, so I went and I buried it, and here it is back, okay? It's yours. I have it back. What you gave me, here it is. I didn't do anything with it. And if you read what Jesus says there in verse 28, he told them, to those who use well what they are given, even more will be given, and they will have an abundance in verse 29. But from those who do nothing, even what little they have will be taken away. Now throw this useless servant into outer darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. So, church, what are we to be about? What are we to be about today? We've been living in the last days for the last 2,000 years. And sometimes it's easy for us to look at our world and think, wow, the world has never been this bad before. If we think that, we have not studied our world history very well. It's been a lot worse. Our problem is, I am living right now in the United States of America, and right now the United States of America is hurting. And we have on blinders because we think the world has never been this bad before. And so now we're looking, okay, Jesus, when are you coming back? So what is Peter's words for us today? And also understand, this was for his day. Not a lot has changed, has it? Because the end of the world is coming soon. What should our reaction be? Should it be fear? Have you ever had dreams about the second coming? Is anybody? Or am I the only person, anybody, even as a kid, that had dreams? Okay, I got one hand. Okay, Marie, you and I, we think too much alike, I guess. Reading our Bible, how we do it, and all that kind of stuff. But, I can remember waking up, and I think it was because I kind of grew up with a lot of the hellfire and brimstone stuff, that I was scared to death for Jesus to come back. And I would wake up and I was terrified, and I was trying to go and grab friends to take with me because I knew they weren't ready. And so I thought, I got to run and I got to get them to make sure they're going to be there, and them to get, and it was just terrifying to me. But I hope after today, fear will not be a part of our lives as we look for the coming of Jesus again. We won't be filled with anxiety and worry. Sometimes there's those of us maybe even sitting right here or watching on Zoom or YouTube later. You know, we could be here right now thinking, oh, I don't know, man. I had kind of a rough week. I said some things I shouldn't have said. I had attitudes I shouldn't have had. I did some things I shouldn't have done. I'm not for sure if I'm ready for Jesus to come back. So what is Peter's reaction to all of this? What is his advice for all of this? And his advice is that we pray. Pray. Look what he says in chapter 4, 1 Peter, verse 7. The end of the world is coming soon. Therefore, because the end of the world is going to come one day, we don't know when. Jesus said, even I don't know. Only my Father knows. But it's coming. So what should we be doing? Be earnest and disciplined in your prayers. Our prayers should be focused. Our prayers should have purpose. We need to put effort into our prayers. Church, Jesus is coming again. That should help us to focus our prayers and to pray with energy, to pray with boldness as we look for the day that Jesus comes back. Again, this is a core teaching of Jesus. When you think about your prayer life, do you have trouble praying? Sometimes. Do you have trouble sometimes focusing your prayers? Do your prayers sometimes seem more like a Christmas list and you're talking to Santa Claus instead of praying to our Abba Father? You see, he says we need to pray with earnest and discipline in our prayers. Discipline. We need to pray with self-control. We need to pray with clarity. Do you pray with clarity? Do you pray with pinpoint focus? Because the things that we pray about are going to be concerning the choices we make in life, the choices you make in life and I make in life. And since the end of the world is coming soon, therefore be earnest and disciplined in your prayers. And then in verse 8 he says, most important of all. And if you have the regular old-fashioned Bibles with ink and page, if you don't, if you're on the phone, that's okay. God bless you. That's fine. But either way, if you can highlight those words, most important of all, or underline that with a pen or pencil, I would do that because this is the most important of all. Continue to show deep love for each other, for love covers a multitude of sins. The end of the world is coming soon. Jesus is going to return. When? It could be another 2,000 years. Or it could be the next 20 minutes, or it could be the next 60 seconds or less. So what's the most important thing of all that we ought to be doing right now? Loving. one another deeply. For the way we love each other covers over a multitude of sins. What does that mean? If we knew that Jesus was coming back in 60 seconds, how would you treat the person sitting beside you or in front of you or behind you? Or maybe the fact that you're sitting on this side of the building and I don't want to sit on that side of the building because so-and-so sits on that side of the building. You know what? I'm glad I don't think we have any of that here. I've been in churches that have had that. But if I knew that Jesus was coming back soon, my love for you ought to be so deep. And your love for me and our love for one another ought to be so deep that we can overlook wrongs that have been done to us. We can overlook someone who has sinned against us. Why? Because you know why? Because it really just doesn't matter. That person is going to be standing before Jesus quickly, just like me. And I'm not going to hang on to some of this old stuff. I'm not going to keep bringing up, yeah, but you remember back in the day, people, Jesus is coming soon. He says the most important thing is for us to love deeply because this love covers over a multitude of sins. We're not concerned about holding on to old grudges. We need to be living our lives loving one another deeply. And he also says in verse 9, cheerfully share your home with those who need a meal or a place to stay. What's he talking about there? He's talking about hospitality. So if I were to ask you, okay, so how can we be hospitable to one another? I think probably the first thing that we would say is, oh, well, you know what, hospitality, we can invite somebody into our house to enjoy a meal. Or we can invite somebody into our house and we can play some board games. Not boring games, board games. Or we can invite somebody into our house and we can have some coffee and then we can watch a movie together on the VCR or DVD or whatever. VCR, sorry Dan, that's back, right? That's way back. That's out. DVD or stream it. But let me just say this. What Peter is talking about right here is so much deeper than this. He's not talking about just having somebody come into our house to enjoy a meal together. What he's talking about, he's dealing with refugees that are being persecuted. People that are traveling and running for their very lives out of one country into another country or from one town into another town. And as they're traveling, they did not have time to get their food. They did not have time to plan and have clothes or try to figure out where we're going to stay for the night. And so what Peter is calling believers to do is that when people are coming and they're stranded and they have nowhere to go, you invite them into your house and let them eat your food and let them get some place to rest and to get cleaned up. And this was very dangerous. It was dangerous for the refugees that were traveling through that needed a place to stay. But it was also very dangerous for the followers of Jesus that would let these people come into their houses. How many of us would do this? This happens all over the world today, but not so much in the United States. Man, we have been blessed. But whenever Russia attacked the Ukraine, there were Ukrainian Christians our brothers and sisters that were having to flee the country for their very lives. And as they crossed the border, they needed somebody. They needed somebody that could give them food, could give them just water, some of the very most basic things, and houses. And I read story after story where there were followers of Jesus that were supplying and meeting those needs and doing exactly what Peter is saying. Why? Because Jesus is coming soon. It didn't matter if I didn't have a month's supply of food or could buy a month's supply of food. Why? Because Jesus is coming soon. Or if these people may need to sleep on my floor for a week. Why? Because Jesus is coming soon. Or they would disrupt my schedule for several weeks. Why? Because Jesus is coming soon. It changes everything, doesn't it? And he says in verse 10, God has given each of you. Who's that? Who is each of you? It doesn't exclude anybody, right, John? Each of us. And no, I just saw John. He looked at me, so I called your name. I wasn't saying, right, John? It's all in the tone of the voice. Right, John? But he's given each of us a gift. God has given each of you a gift from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to serve one another. Do you have the gift of speaking? Then speak as though God himself were speaking through you. Do you have the gift of helping others? Do it with all the strength and energy that God supplies. Then, when we do that and use these gifts, everything we do will bring glory to God through Jesus Christ, and all glory and power to him forever and ever. Amen. God has given each one of us spiritual gifts. And it's always, I'm just going to say it. I've had people come up to me through 40 years of preaching and say, Abbott, I don't know what my gift is. Can you tell me what my spiritual gift is? I have no idea. God gave you a spiritual gift. Just like he did with the men in Matthew chapter 25, that he gave the different bags of silver, to one 5, to one 2, to one 1. He said he did that according to their abilities. Some of you are blessed with a lot of spiritual gifts. Some of us are not blessed with so many, and some of us may only be blessed with one thing. But I love how he said, use them how? Use them to serve one another. Our spiritual gifts isn't about us. It's not about me. It's not so that I can say, hey, Brian, look at me. I'm so holy. Look at my gift. The gifts that God gave us and gave you. Yeah, I looked over at my wife, Sherry. I can tell you what your gift is. Taking care of me? No. Your gift, and I think y'all, writing cards. Sending cards. That's your gift. And you use it. And you don't use it to get glory for yourself. I know. You go, well, how's that a spiritual gift? We do it to serve others. We got a friend who's a freshman in college. And a lot of you know AJ, the name. Great artist. He has blessed our lives so much. We got a wall of AJ art. Sometimes he just does little things like and gives it to us because he wants to just bless us. Did you know that your art, if you're an artist, that you can use your art to bless other people? What about music? Play an instrument? Do you write songs? Do you sing? Sing pretty? Did you know that that's a gift from God? It could be a spiritual gift. How? Well, wait a minute, it's just singing. A lot of us sing. Yeah, but you can use that gift that you have to go and to bless others. Whether it's playing the guitar, a flute, a trumpet, or just going and just singing to someone in the hospital or singing to someone that is lonely. Some of you are great cooks. Some of you are not so great cooks. It's a gift, right? Use that gift of cooking, not just to bring you joy, but to bless other people. Some of you are good with math. London goes, mm-hmm. I saw that. Oh, y'all better watch out. I'm going to call you out. No, just kidding. You know, London is good with numbers. Use that gift to bless other people. There are people that cannot balance their budget. Use that gift to go in and to help people balance their budget. I'm just looking at Dan, a doctor in physical therapy. That's a gift. It's your job, but it's a gift. They don't want me doing physical therapy on them. But you can use that gift, and you do use that gift for your job, but also know that sometimes you use that gift outside of your job to bless people in your life that are hurting physically. Do you see what we're saying here? See, so many times we think about spiritual gifts in so many ways. Well, that's not spiritual. Well, yeah, it is. He says everything you do, when we use it to bless others, whether it's driving somebody to the doctor, or going and driving and picking up a prescription at the drugstore. Do you know that that is glorifying God? You ever thought about it that way? Just picking up the telephone, calling someone that you know really would like someone to just talk to. That's glorifying God. Everything we do will bring glory to God through Jesus Christ. So, church, Jesus is coming soon. Don't be filled with anxiety. Don't be filled with fear. Don't be thinking, when. I'm looking at all the signs, trying to get everything. Forget it. If Jesus doesn't know, how in the world are we supposed to figure it out? Don't worry about that. Here's the things that we should be doing today. And right now, we're going to take the Lord's Supper. Because what Jesus started the night before he was crucified with his disciples. He said, I want you to do